Hello everybody, and welcome to this guide to Croesus, the newest boss in the Elder God Wars dungeon and Runescape's first ever skilling boss. A brief disclaimer before we start that obviously this boss is very new and strategies for it are still being developed, so there may well be more efficient ways of doing this than the method I'm going to outline in this video, but hopefully what I'll be describing will give you a consistent way of getting kills that will enable you to start getting stuck in with this boss and having some fun and hopefully getting some good loot. When you get into the arena, you'll see that it's divided into 4 corners. Each corner has a gathering spot for one of the 4 resources, a deposit spot to store that resource, and a statue. The boss itself is in the centre of the arena, and very simply the aim of the fight is to get the boss's health to 0 before his rot bar, which is the percentage you can see just underneath his health here, fills up to 100. If the bar fills up before you've killed the boss, you'll be teleported out of the arena and you'll have to start again from the beginning. Broadly speaking, there are 3 phases to the fight. In the first, your aim is to exhaust the 4 resource spots. In the second, your aim is to restore the 4 statues. And in the third, your aim is to finish the boss by gathering from the core. Throughout the fight, the boss's rot bar will gradually fill up. He will also repeatedly use mechanics which can cause your stats to be drained if you get hit by them. Having your stats drained increases the rot bar further, so it's important to avoid the mechanics as best as you can. To begin with, talk to Gorvek to get him to transport you to one of the 4 resource spots. You generally want your players to be evenly distributed between the different spots at the beginning. A team of 4 is a good number to start with, in which everybody is responsible for one node. If you've got additional players, you may wish to station them on the nodes that are slower. In this case, I'm on the fishing node, which is the Croesus Leviathan in the northeast corner. I will be gathering fungal algae. You'll see on the Croesus there are 3 spots from which I can gather this algae. One of them, the one I'm on at the moment, is glistening, one of them is normal, and one of them is dark. You want to be gathering from the glistening one as much as possible, or the normal one if you can't do that. Avoid gathering from the dark or rotten one, because this will give you rotten fungi rather than useful resources, and will also decrease your progress towards depleting this node. And very simply, I want to continue gathering from these nodes until the carcass is depleted, avoiding mechanics as they happen. You'll usually have obtained about 30 resources during this time, so if you're on a node solo, then make sure you deposit any additional resources on the storage spot that's just behind me here, in order to free up inventory space to continue gathering. Once the carcass is depleted, it will start slowly regenerating, and it's important that the carcass stays depleted for the rest of the boss fight, particularly when you're attacking the core. You can use 10 rotten fungus on it to slow the regeneration, which can be obtained by clicking on any normal fungus in your inventory to rot it. With a bit of practice, this is unlikely to be necessary, as you'll be finishing the boss fight before the carcasses regenerate, but when you're learning, it's often a good idea to do this to give you more time to deal with the rest of the fight. And that's it for stage 1. Before I go on to stage 2, I'm just going to cover some of the mechanics that you'll be encountering, which you'll continue facing throughout the fight. Mechanics will be happening approximately every 15 seconds. The first one you'll encounter is just a patch of energy on the floor, which you want to move out of the way of, because if you stand in it, it will begin draining your stats. And once again, every time your stats are drained, the rot bar will fill up faster. So either just walk out of the way of it as soon as it appears, or as we're doing here, you can escape out of the way just before it spawns so that it drops away from the resource nodes and then head back in to continue gathering. With the second mechanic, you'll see a rotten fairy ring slowly appear underneath you. You'll want to move out of the way of this, as if you remain standing on it, you will be teleported to a random quadrant of the arena. The next mechanic, some little orangey-yellow slime things will appear, one for each of you, and start moving towards you. You want to stay out of the way of these, because if they come into contact with you, they will explode, reducing your stats. The easiest option here is just to run around to the far side of whichever carcass you're on, and the jelly should get stuck on the other side until it times out. There'll then be another energy patch which you dodge as normal, and then the next mechanic is a stun. Very simply, just freedom this and then move out of the way to avoid any stat drain. The next mechanic is the sticky fungus. You'll be caught into place with a patch of fungus on the ground underneath you, and you will remain there repeatedly having your stats drained until you are freed or it times out. The easiest way to deal with this is just to free yourself, which you can do by clicking on the sticky fungus as long as you have some logs or fungal timber in your inventory. For this reason, I'd recommend just taking some protein logs in your preset so that you've always got some with you without having to worry about them taking up too much inventory space. For the final mechanic, 4 blobs of fungal energy will appear around the boss in the centre. You need to run in and clear these before the timer on them runs down. If the timer runs down before you've cleared them, then there will be a significant increase to the rot bar percentage. You usually need the majority of the team clearing these, so it's best if you run in as soon as this happens. Anyway, as discussed for stage 1, continue gathering your resource until the carcass you're on has depleted, avoiding mechanics as they happen, and then we'll move on to stage 2. In the 4 corners of the arena there are 4 statues which need restoring. Each statue requires 2 sets of 15 resources of different types. You can see on the diagram here the resource types that are needed for each statue. Shout out to the Runescape wiki for this wonderful diagram. So the aim of this phase is to get the resources from the place where they've been gathered to the statues they're needed at. There are a number of different ways this can be done, but the important thing is to coordinate with your team so that you are all agreed on one strategy, and also to note that each resource is needed by the 2 statues that are anti-clockwise of it around the arena, so you generally want to be carrying resources anti-clockwise. For the strategy we've been using, you deposit 15 of your resources in the deposit box, and take the other 15. You head 2 spaces anti-clockwise to the far corner, drop your resources at the statue there, then pick up 15 more resources from the storage box of the corner you're now in, and take them round 1 space anti-clockwise, using them on the statue there. So for example, if I'm gathering fungal algae in the northeast corner, I would leave 15 in the deposit box, I'd take 15 with me all the way around to the southwest corner, drop them in the statue there, I'd then grab 15 timber from the deposit box in the southwest corner and run them over to the southeast corner, using them on the statue in the southeast. By the time I've dropped them at the statue there, it should have all the resources it needs, so I can then stay in the southeast corner and rebuild that statue. But that's just one way of doing things. There are lots of options here. The important thing is to agree with your team to make sure that no corner gets left out. Once the statue has the 2 sets of resources it needs, it can then be rebuilt, and once it's been fully rebuilt it can be prayed at, which will open the shield around the core for a certain time, allowing you to go in and gather from the core itself. Generally speaking, it's a good idea to coordinate, such that all 4 statues are restored before you start attacking the core. So once you've restored your statue, you usually want to wait until your team has restored all the other statues before praying at yours to open the core. The final thing to note for this stage is that in order to move between any of the corners, you'll need to pass through an area of mushrooms. Either an area of large mushrooms which you can climb over, such as these ones, or a maze of small mushrooms. For the large mushrooms, it's important that you only climb over ones that are glistening, as I'm doing here. If you climb over ones that aren't glistening, then you will take stat drain, and some of the resources in your bag will be rotted. For the small mushroom maze, you want to avoid standing on any of the small mushrooms, otherwise once again you'll take some stat drain and some of your resources will rot. It's usually possible to do this by using bladed dive to move immediately to a clear area somewhere in the middle, and then surging from there to the end. It's often a good idea to take a couple of spare resources with you, so that if 1 or 2 do get rotted, you still have enough to finish the statue, without having to go back for more. Finally, with all 4 statues restored, it's time to move on to the final stage of attacking the core. Once you pray at the statue, the shield around the boss's core will open up for a certain period of time, allowing you to go in and gather from the core itself. This will deal damage to the boss. Damage dealt to the boss is dependent on how many of the 4 resource carcasses are fully depleted. So once again, it's really important that you depleted all 4 carcasses during stage 1, and that if needed you rotted them to prevent them restoring, so that all 4 are still depleted by the time you are attacking the core. The core will stay open for longer based on the number of statues that have been prayed at, and so often the easiest way to deal with this is to pray at all 4 statues at the same time, which should keep the core open for more than long enough for you to completely deplete the boss's health and finish the fight. One final note: while you are gathering from the core, you will occasionally see sparkles, such as this one here. If you click on the core when there is a white sparkle or a green sparkle, you will deal some additional damage to the core. If you click on the core when there is a red sparkle, you will heal the boss, which is obviously something you want to avoid doing. And that's pretty much all you need to know. Hopefully, if you've done everything correctly up until this point, you'll have plenty of time to attack the core and finish the boss, and hopefully you'll get a nice set of loot at the end. One final note on gear. You'll see I've got a pretty basic preset here. The important things are having the best tool you've got for each of the 3 resources. In this case, I'm using a crystal fishing rod, crystal hatchet, and pickaxe of earth and song. I've got some super restores to restore my stats in case I do take damage from any of the mechanics. I've got some protein logs to enable me to escape from the sticky fungus. I've got an offhand weapon equipped to allow me to bladed dive around the arena. And finally, I've got runes for the Crystal Mask spell. While this isn't necessary, having Crystal Mask active will block one set of stat drain from one of the mechanics, so it's quite nice to keep it up as a safety net. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this guide helpful, and I hope you have fun trying out this boss. See you for the next video.